and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
You know, Paul, and I will tell you now that Paul Fowl is lurking in the wings, ready to pounce this morning with great thoughts and great ideas. But you know something, Paul, that girl has got a following. She's got a fan club. What's she got that you and I haven't got? Oh, dearie me. What it is to be famous on television. And who are we? Well, let us tell you who we are. If we can find who we are. Yeah, we are Mirador Television out of Sussex in out of East Sussex, Lewes in East Sussex. Oh, it's going to be one of those days, I can tell. As the famous newscaster said, Mother told me we'd have days like this. But here we go in the morning. This is who we are. Well, there we are. That's Mirador Television, based in the historic town of Lewes in East Sussex in the UK. Has a namesake in Lewes, Delaware in the United States, and one or two other Lewises scattered around the world, actually. But we are the original, and very historic we are indeed. We were here before the invasion of the conquest of 1066. What have we got on board this morning? Well, we've got a couple of hefty news items, which we'll discuss with Paul Fowl in a moment. But I will warn you that the weather is going to change tomorrow, and we are going to get an icy blast from the north. It ain't going to be very pleasant. But what have we got today? Well, here we are. Let's have a look. Now, we have to assume that the experts have got it right, and that's what we're going to enjoy today. It is not drizzling at this very moment in time. I'm looking through the window of the studio, and it certainly is not. And my famous tree is static. So the breeze is very light, and there's no rain at the moment, and thin light cloud. But keep an eye on it, because if the bad weather is on the way, I'm sure it'll push in. It's just a time scale that sometimes the experts get wrong. The stories this morning in the news. Well, there's, of course, the big argument now about whether there's going to be a shortage of the vaccine. Will we or won't we? The government is saying, well, be careful. We may not get new vaccine supplies until the 29th. And the people that manufacture it, Pfizer, etc., are saying, rubbish. We've got any amount on the way. So we're indulging in the same political shenanigans that they seem to have been indulging in on the continent. And that gets worse with everybody trying to deny that they should have the AstraZeneca jab. Well, I've had it, and a lot of people that hate the thought that I'm still alive, but I am, and it hasn't affected me adversely. Well, yes, it has really. It's just made me more of a curmudgeon. Secondly, the big story, of course, is the royal pain, the big fight that's going on. And Wills is now worried that because Harry and Meghan have blown the private talks thing to the media, her friendly media people, is that he's going to be plastered on all his private chats are going to be plastered all over the front page. I am more worried, and I'm going to talk to Paul about this. I'm more worried about the effect on the constitution or a constitutional monarchy. I could care less about their little private spats. I mean, to me, I'm terribly sorry, but even though 50% of the populace are sticking up for Meghan, I'm not happy. I'm not happy that she's blab, blab, blab. Okay, we all like to boast. We all actually exaggerate a little bit. But she's gone beyond the pale. She is tampering with the way that we're governed in Britain. And I cannot forgive her for that. So that's that. Now, one other story that actually is returning is the Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore. Some people won't remember Barrymore, but towards the end of the last century, and perhaps a little bit in the beginning of this, he was probably the most famous comedian on television of anybody. Everybody knew Lionel Barrymore, and he had some very, very popular shows. And he held a party one night at his house, and the next day, a young man was found floating in the pool, dead. And ever since, it's been suggested that he was murdered. And now a man has been held all this time later over the pool murder. He's been bailed, but that is all coming back home to roost. In fact, it ruined Barrymore's career. He just disappeared, and although it comes here and there, not much of the man is heard. So on to other things, and here he is. I hope he hasn't gone for a coffee. Ah, there he is. There he is, bright and beautiful. All things bright and beautiful, all foul.
Right. Firstly, Keith, I know it's early days. It was Michael Barrymore. Lionel Barrymore.
Oh, Michael. Sorry, not Lionel. Yeah. Yeah, no, you're quite right. Lionel was the famous,
was the famous
generation thing.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
I have to say, Paul, I don't know why, but at the bottom, I got your name right. And it's on the system, it's got Pauk still.
Actually, Keith, I've got so many enemies. It might be useful to keep that false name. That's good. Pork.
Right, Paul. Let's kick off because I really am getting quite angry about the shenanigans of the younger royals. I mean, particularly this lady from overseas, because I don't care about all their shenanigans. Probably if we look back and we think, oh my God, the night I got drunk and I did, all of us would have skeletons in the closet. But in this case, she seems bent on attacking the British monarchy, which is part of our constitution, unwritten part of our constitution, but nonetheless part of our constitution and part of the structure of our governance. And I can't forgive her for that. But do you take any view on it?
Have a guess who's going to come out the winner, Keith. It ain't going to be Meghan and Harry, I'll assure you now. We've had far worse constitutional issues. Think of Edward before the war. Queen Victoria, there was an assassination on her stage of the reign, which people forget. She's a drama queen. She's married. She knew what she was marrying into. She should have, if any one of us has such privilege, we should actually follow the protocol and a sense of duty. She's just blown it wide open. But here's the thing. I've managed to call some friends of mine in America. One of my friends, an investment banker, I said, what is the feeling in New York, etc.? He said, have a guess whose side we take. You know, the Americans probably, like us, realise the Queen is good. And I think, to me, the press have actually whipped it up far more than it's worth. The Queen hasn't answered, and thank God for that. She rises above it. I don't care what anybody says. If you take a poll of this country, and you take a poll in Australia, and you take a poll in Canada, the Queen is still loved and still wanted as a constitutional monarchy. And as we talked about benevolent dictatorships the other day, Keith, having a single monarch can be very good. If you have a government that's made up of different hues, there's no decision made. The Queen does her duty beautifully. She's risen above this, and I wish the press would drop it. And that's it. I think I'm speaking for the majority of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand, and being a member of the press all the time I do think that yes, we're whipping it up a bit at the moment, but also we have to realise that we report on things that happen, and I think that Harry and Meghan are behaving in a disgraceful way. I'm really very, very upset about it.
Yeah. I don't see what she's got to complain about, Keith, because she's bright. She's quite a good actress, I understand. My American friends, that's fine. So surely she knew what she was marrying into. So why raise all these points? Why be sneaky and do it behind their backs?
Yeah.
It's wicked.
Now, let me ask you this, because you said you talked to American friends, but in the States, particularly, it's spilled over to here a little bit, but in the States particularly, is whenever a political issue arises, always the famous actors, get into the act. You know, Barbara Streisand says that Trump is awful, and Stuart Granger says that Biden is wonderful. I mean, does it matter? You're right. They are very good actors. Full stop. Very rarely, like Schwarzenegger, and Reagan, who ventured into politics and showed that they got a bit of metal around them. But generally speaking, these are empty-headed people who, and yet they sway millions with their views. Perhaps we should slap their fingers hard.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, Keith, that the numbers, I understand, going to Buckingham Palace have risen, in fact, in many ways. If you talk to any tourist, whether they're Latvian, Mongolian, whatever, they head for Buckingham Palace, one of the first things in London. So on that alone, she's earning her crust. But the point is, she earns her crust by actually working hard. Her hours are phenomenal, sometimes 14 hours a day for an 89-year-old. So it's quite amazing, Keith. We should cherish her. Like, it's funny. Here we are in England demeaning things. If you go to Australia today or Canada, they love the Queen. You've worked in Canada, Keith. I've worked in Canada. And again, I haven't found my Toronto contacts, but I know that my New York contacts, and New Yorkers are quite hard, have said, hey, we love her. What's your view of Meghan? Well, she's making trouble. It seems to me that, have a guess who's going to come out. A boxing match, it'll be a knockout to the Queen.
Right. Well, you mentioned Canada, and in fact, I covered 2 royal tours to Canada. And on one famous occasion, I hung upside down from the top floor of the City Hall, being held up on the ankles by a colleague with a phone in my hand, so we could report the Queen's arrival and departure. And it was a bit point, but communication was a bit difficult. They did actually haul me back in. But the other thing, Paul, is overseas people, particularly Commonwealth people, and I have a lot to do with them because up until lockdown, I trained a lot of Commonwealth people, and I would always take them down to the palace, and I would walk by and I'd say, of course, when I stay here, and I point to a little window at the top right hand of the front of the palace, and I say, and that's my little room, and that's where I stay. And I'll just look up to see whether she's there today, and they love it. They howl with laughter, and they're not sure whether I'm telling the truth. and yes, you're right. I mean, all Commonwealth countries, I think, are really very happy that they have the Queen as part of their makeup.
But I found this traveling the world, Keith, that other countries value things very much. We seem to take people for granted. But if you took a poll, oh yeah, we do like the Queen. But I think we're very much, she's part of the furniture, Keith, which in a way is a compliment to her.
Yeah.
Because, and also, if you look at it, she's what she's done is phenomenal, Keith. I think she'll probably go down history as probably a better Queen than Victoria. That might sound a bit of a brash statement, but Victoria could, locked herself away, was very much a curmudgeon. The Queen is out walking amongst people. She's 89, for God's sake. I think it's 89. And can you imagine standing on your feet for 4 hours at 89? I couldn't do it. She is phenomenal, and she's a national treasure. And I've got left-wing friends, right-wing friends. I'm sure I've got revolutionary friends, and even they concede, yep, she does a good job. But the money thing comes in, but she's so expensive. She repays the nation far more than the money that she's given. Far more. I forget the figures. It's phenomenal. If she was a company, she'd probably be like an Amazon company, because she's everyone likes her. I don't think around the world I've had anybody say, well, yeah, but they're envious. We've got the Queen, Keith, and being English, we never treasure what we should treasure.
Yes. And can I tell you another little story? Because as you know, I pepper our discussions with some of these stories. But I belong to let's put it so for security reasons, I won't say what, but an organisation where the Queen, until quite recently, because of her age, held her private lunches, and the Queen Mother did so before her. And when she went to check it out, the gentleman in charge said she walked in and took a look at this room, which is a lovely, lovely room, and she said, "Oh, I do now see why Mummy loved this room so much," which is just down to earth, Yeah, Mom liked this place.
But you think of the strain, Keith. Imagine that you wake up in the morning, you're Queen, and you've not just got your private life and your family, etc. You actually have to influence the country. So she must be the most tireless worker that I know of, and I think people are realising that now. I don't think they give Meghan. She's headstrong. I'm sure she's not a nasty person, but I'm sure she's been influenced by some American media company to raise this. And it seemed to me, watching, I'm a body language person. Being an ex-policeman, I can tell body language. Harry was certainly not comfortable. Look how he crossed his legs. She's probably I'm not saying the brains of the family. She might well be of those two, but it was they both look very uncomfortable, Keith. I think they put themselves into a difficult position, and they're the losers.
Yeah, I think that she's probably behaving the way that she would if she was back in her native America, and I wouldn't be critical of that. The way the Americans lead their lives is exactly the way that they should and want to lead their lives. But we, with all due respect, we don't do it that way here. And I think that she tried to impose American values and how we get our points across, only to find that we don't, and that that many things that America is powerful for, but our mores and the way that we behave over here is not among them. Anyway, thanks for those comments, because as usual, incisive. But you've got one or two other things that are bothering you today, haven't you?
I have, Keith. Well, you raised one of them. I think now that we've covered all COVID, we've got to a stage where it's almost over. Fingers crossed. you raised the thing as affordability of loan repayments. Now, this is a big worry. I think now the health issue's gone. I think at the beginning of all this problem, it was health versus economy. And we've covered the health because that, you can't have an economy if everyone dies. So health has to come first. Secondly, you've now got economy. And this is where the government might not be able to square the circle. Post-lockdown, if there's a spending spree, which I suspect, human nature being what it is, there is, the spending spree will add to undermining their economic plan. So whilst they gave a great speech in the budget and have a 1 to 2 year plan, that can be knocked over by a mad spending spree, the public not going along with it. And let's face it, I don't know about my son is of the generation where debt, if you were in our generation, Keith, if we were in debt, you were either frowned upon by all the neighbours, or you were partly ostracised. Now it's turned the other way, where 17-year-olds can have £140,000 debt. So the point I'm making is that since we're blasé about debt, you can see it's going to increase, and have a guess what that will bring. You'll probably almost bring a monetary recession on, and other countries the same, Keith. For the viewers, I was in Australia when they did a Australian TV company and BBC, and they did it. They had kids of about 17, 18, all being interviewed about their monetary situation. One girl said she had $180,000 debt in Australia, which amounts to about £140,000. And the invigilator, which it was, said, well, why, aren't you worried about that? No. Who's going to repay the debt? I won't. I don't have to. Now, if people could watch that program, you'll see it's stunning. I've got friends, so let's face it, you can't blame the government for everything. We must also take our own responsibility. And getting into debt, but as I'm saying, Keith, you can see that the fashion is getting into debt is no problem. Bankruptcy takes 5 minutes to sort out. Now, so we've swung from really harsh punishment to actually liberal monetary policy. So the problem the government has got is that the figures won't stack up. And there's an uncertain future because of this spending spree plus other matters. So I'm not trying to be a doom monger, Keith, but we could be heading for a very difficult year, especially if people spend.
Well, you posed the question, or the people that you were listening to posed the question, is who is going to satisfy that debt? And if in fact it turns out to be bankruptcy, a lot of people get hurt. Now, if that's widespread, as you're suggesting that it is who's going to get hurt, and who is going to pay it back? Or will bankruptcy simply wipe it out, and a lot of people will get hurt?
I mean, again, we're not squaring the circle here, Keith. I can't see the public going along with the government's plan or the budget, because their view will be, and again, quite right, it's human nature. Emotion will take over. We had a really tough time. You and I can't wait to get to the pub, Keith. I've not had alcohol for about a year and a half. And so have a guess what we'll do, and we're quite responsible people, we'll go for a beer. Or 3 or 4. But I just think that the relief, whenever the public get relieved, have some relief, spending is what we all do. It's our national pastime, Keith. So you can't expect people to actually be prudent, which is what the government wants. So what I'm saying is the government's plan can only work if there's a cooperative public. But if a lot of the public are just getting into debt, then we're facing problems. And I've got I don't want to shock the viewers, but I when I was at university, I did a study of the Weimar Republic when Germany was in recession, where 1,000 marks would buy you a teaspoon. I hate to say it, but and everyone says it can't ever happen again. There's a danger that we go. At the moment, there's a few factors which actually match the Weimar Republic. We're encouraging borrowing. We're supporting the public, etc. Look what happened with Germany, and look what happened to the world. Now, I'm not being sensationalist here, but it's interesting. History can sometimes repeat itself. We have this arrogant view that oh, don't worry, wars will never happen. Unless we are vigilant, wars will happen. And I'm saying that Britain could be going down a downward path. Hence, my next point, which is will cover the EU, is that we should take a lead along with France and Germany to get EU into shape where it is actually a viable, feasible, and powerful influence for good.
All right, well, we'll come back and we'll talk that through, because you mentioned that you wanted to talk about that this morning, and I think there's some very good thoughts there. Just while we're talking about the finances, though, of the country, is it does seem to me that if there is this great surge of spending, that there has got to be a dent on the financial system of the country. And, the government has spent a hell of a lot of money supporting the hole that is created by the pandemic. Has it got the resources to support a hole if it's created by spend?
Keith, if the spending is very high, Keith, then that shot the Chancellor's plan straight away, because he laid it out, as we know. I'm sure the public knew this. It's a 1 and 2 year policy, Keith, which actually, if everything works out, it's a good decision. The trouble is, life doesn't work that way, Keith. People fluctuate, are volatile. But I can see, I talk to my friends. I've got an opera singer friend. I've got people in all various walks of life. Obviously, whether you're smart, don't have money, whatever, you're going to celebrate the end of this lockdown, Keith. We've been in effectively an open prison for a year and a bit, and I use those words advisedly. So it's natural. You and I have said we'll have a drink, we can celebrate, it'll be great. It depends how long that spending spree goes on. But some people who've had these loans, the Sybil loans and the other loans, the bounce back loans, they will probably want to refinance that. They'll obviously will be stopped from taking out new loans. But the problem is the public have been given loans, and quite rightly. But the trouble is, when it's all over, they might expect the government just to keep refinancing it, Keith. So we're in a loop where debt will just increase, and you know what the result of that is. Right. So I think we've got to be realistic. Everyone says, we won't be in the same position as, say, Germany in the recession in the 30s. We won't be. But look at America, the greatest economy, and look at Hooverville and look at the recession they had. It was only the war that really saved America. And as we all know, war is the terrible thing to say. War is the biggest economic...
Absolutely, economic driver. Yeah. Right, so we'll come back and we'll talk some more about your thoughts in a minute. Okay. But let's remember the way that it was. By a mix of emotion, got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully, appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Now, there's not one scene in that. Those are pictures taken by Mirador about 14 or 15 months ago, and there's not one picture there where we haven't found a considerable change, that those things have been taken away from us. And surely the lust to get back to that sort of situation will override everything. No, you would say. And actually, I'm beginning to say, no. Who knows what changes we're going to get? But anyway, Paul, you really have got a couple of other things you're worried about, apart from piling money into the national debt.
Well, can I just quickly finish on that point, Keith? There is a positive side. There's an alternative side. Is of course that by spending, the hospitality will grow. In a way, it's a strange thing, isn't it? The fact that people are going to go on a spending spree means a bit of danger. but if they're spending on hospitality, it helps hospitality to recover. So there's more of a danger than there isn't a danger, Keith, but there is a quid pro quo. So it's not disaster, but it depends how much we all spend and what we do till Christmas, So sorry. So you carry on. You were saying.
No. It's okay because I'm relying upon you this morning because you're the clever clogs of this duo. I just asked the silly questions. But I thought it's just 8 o'clock now, 8:01 in fact. Just let me remind people about the headlines because the row has now started here about vaccine, and that is one arm is saying we won't have enough and we won't get any until March the 29th, and the makers are saying I don't know why because we're manufacturing it at the same rate. Secondly, the royal thing lurches on with Harry and Meghan causing more trouble, and the people in the royal family, with wills and so on, getting more and more upset because they believe that anything that they say to this lady is not held in confidence, even though undoubtedly that agreement is made. And thirdly, that it wasn't Lionel Barrymore, but Michael Barrymore, who a few years ago was the top comedian. His pool party ended in disaster. Somebody was murdered, and it looks as if they've now caught a man, and that's going to be dragged across the headlines again. I feel a little bit for Barrymore. I can't say who's somebody that I warm to, but nonetheless, who wants something that happened so many years ago to come back and haunt you like this? But it is. Locally, one thing it's been building over the last couple of weeks or so, and now the police commissioner here, Katie Bourne, is getting into it, saying, "Hey, we've got to do something about this." Is that dogs are being stolen, and dogs are being stolen. I mean, there's been a huge increase in dog napping. People are almost afraid to let their dog sit in the outside garden because somebody's going to nip over the fence and nick it. I assume that there is a dog market. I hope that they're not sending it to China, where it's a delicacy. But those are the three things that are going on, mainly in the headlines, and the three things which are capturing the imagination of the public. So, Paul, back to you.
I suppose you could say that the police will have to be dogged in sorting this out. Just
yes,
it's strange, actually. I mean, it's very strange. Dogs being stolen. When I was a policeman, I don't remember you had lost dogs, but you very rarely got dogs stolen. It's quite unusual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strange.
I mean, dog napping has just increased enormously. I mean, there have been mentions in the media over the last few weeks, but now when the police commissioner, who should have plenty on her plate right now with the state of the police, starts to get excited about it and saying, "Hey, we've got to do something about this," it's pretty hefty stuff. I mean, there's nothing like an Englishman and his dog. And actually, an English woman and her cat. We are animal lovers. We just get very close to them, and we try to protect them and so on. So to have them nicked is not funny, and it's got to epidemic proportions apparently. People stealing around at night. But does it come back again to if we had more policemen on the beat, there would be less dog napping? I don't know. Anyway, away you go. Well, we've lost your sound. What have you done? You've turned something off. Paul, you've turned something off. We can't hear you. It's easily done. Oh, it says that your microphone is muted. See if you can unmute your microphone. There must be a little button there with a little line through the microphone. It's so easily done with these things to switch stuff off. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's go just to me for the moment while you can fool around with it and see if you can get back and let me know when you have. I'm sorry about that because Paul's commentary is so important. But what we can do is we can take a moment or two because we do need to let people know that there are those who are great supporters of ours and that they put their money where their mouths are. So let's just take a look.
When you've missed the train, don't despair. Have a nice cup of coffee. And perhaps a mince pie. At the runaway on Lewis Station. After that, why worry about the next train? The runaway on Lewis Station. Relaxation beyond compare.
Right, it's 9 minutes past 8, and I think that we're okay again. We should be able to hear you now, Paul.
Yeah, Keith. What it was is the mic. No, I don't even touch anything. The mic turned itself off. Hello, Keith.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I don't. I never touched the laptop during the session. It went. I think it's when an advert went on. So yeah, I don't even touch it, Keith. So,
somebody said to me the other day. They said that we really enjoy watching you and Paul. That when the two of you get stumped by technology, it's like a comedy show. You know, the two of us faffing around, totally incapable of doing anything, not knowing what's going wrong. So there we are. We've had our little comedy bit. Let's get back to serious stuff now. Get cracking. Come on. Concentrate.
Yeah. Remember, none of these technologies, Keith, are actually that reliable. Remember that. StreamYard is the same. So you get downtime. Yeah. Anyway, right, let's go to move to the EU. This is something the EU is very important for various reasons. Okay, forget whether you voted Brexit or to stay in the EU. The decision to be made, if we reform, the EU is not fit for purpose, which I think most people will accept, certainly most economists accept. I think that if you have leadership of Germany, France and Britain, we all work together, which sounds crazy, allies, enemies, etc. The three big powers should be driving the EU. And that way, after all, everyone will benefit from the EU, but not something that locks you in. I thought the EU was set up, it seemed to be set up for a few nations, but I do think that the EU is a good thing, Keith, if it's reformed properly, if every nation participates. And the key thing is, because this is how you avoid wars, you help the smaller countries like Albania, like help Hungary, etc. So I just think that the pigs have been in the trough in the EU. It is not fit for purpose, and we can all prove that, and it will so conspire. You're getting arguments amongst them now; they're desperate, etc. So my view is that the EU should still be the EU, but we don't have to be tied by the umbilical cord. It should be you act together, rather like the First World War and the the League of Nations. When there's a major problem, you get together, Keith. In other words, individual countries doing their own thing, but clearly have duties to the common good. It's that simple. Yeah. I know all this tosh that's talked about it. When Brexit, oh my God, we're doomed, etc. Well, actually, Britain has just overtaken France on certain measurements of the economy. So we're not doing too badly, guys. Don't knock this country. This country has fought for liberty, has done a lot of good things. So has France, so has Germany. It's just a question of getting us to speak to each other and getting rid of some of the leaders or the fat cats in the EU, who many of whom are corrupt and are pigs in the trough. So reform it completely, and we'll all get all right. Look, I'm part French. Many of my friends are Germans. They all want the same thing. So let's do it. And Britain could take the lead on that.
Yeah, I think that before we sound too pompous, of course, reform is desperately needed in our own system. However, I think you're absolutely right that the reform in the EU is desperately required. But the problem is that the system allows just a few people to control everything, and they're the people that are, putting 10 Rolls Royces in their garage. And when they want the 11th, they just sign a docket. And getting people to give up that sort of power, authority, and wealth is very, very difficult. And not least of which is, I think many US presidents have done this, and that is sign a document. So once I'm out of power, once you find out what I've been up to, I can't be prosecuted. I think that's probably a lot to do with it.
That's right. Yes, you're right. But there must be a way, Keith. We might all speak different languages. We might have different cultures, but we're all human, and I don't see why. France, Germany, and Britain are the big three, really. Well, France is now a lesser of the big three. There must be a way of you can still preserve your own way of life, but commit yourself on a reasonable percentage to efforts on behalf of the union. So it's because it's not democratic. It's an unelected commission. This is what people forget. It was unelected, and the general member of the EU Parliament really just either rubber stamps or his view isn't taken into. So it's not a democratic union. It isn't. So let's get one.
Yeah. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think it's the reform of the EU. It could be a very powerful organization if it was thought through. But I've come to the conclusion, Paul. They say that in any society, the cream rises to the top. I think what's happening in the world politics at the moment is the cream is settled at the bottom and isn't being released.
Exactly.
I think we've got the sour bit at the top when you open up the bottle of milk, and until that changes. But how do we encourage people who are gifted and are thinkers and are determined to try and help their community, because they're not encouraged at the moment. If anything, when the establishment finds out, they dump on them. Let's stop them.
Well, I think
Isn't it funny, Paul? If I could just say for a moment, there's a police siren there. The policemen are going somewhere. How wonderful it is that we can sit here and not tremble that it might be us that they're coming for. Where in so many countries in the world, and I mean, you mentioned Germany and so on, but in so many countries, it is still true. You hear the police siren, and you cringe in case it's going to be you.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, yeah. I think actually that police, they're after a man who stole a dog who works for Mirador.
Yeah, he settled at my feet, chewing on his biscuits.
Can I make a Katie Bourne, who I met when she first got elected? I think she should talk more. Look, it's serious about losing dogs, but there are more important things to talk about. The fact that the police commissioner can talk about dogs as being the problem. There are other things going on, like assaults, murder, etc. So, and I was never for the police commissioner setup. It's not workable, Keith. So that's me as when they had police authority, it was better. It was more democratic.
Yeah, they just added another layer, and
of course,
I agree with you. It hasn't worked. Doesn't matter how nice they are. So why is it there?
Well,
I agree.
The Queen
but, one of the things, Paul, that bothers me is that you mentioned the police commission. We talked about government and so on and so forth. And what I think is lacking at every level, doesn't matter whether you're talking about Westminster or you're talking about Southover, is they've lost the art, if they ever had it, of communication. We don't know what's going on. And, we are very lucky to have a real analyst and a real feel for a journalism that they call to research in Stephen Catlin, because he does go digging to find out what on earth is going on. And 9 times out of 10 is the politicians at this level just sail on regardless. As we are green, we managed to get a lawn in a backyard. How wonderful! We are Lib Dems. Oh, we managed to get some liberal approach on this. We're conservatives. Oh, we managed to save you a few bob on it. They've lost touch with the fact that what happens nationally 9 times out of 10 affects us locally, and that they should start to look at it and start to explain what they're doing and how they match things in, and what their policies are. Well, I haven't a clue. And I'm not as stupid as most. It's put it that way.
Really?
Well, shush.
Oh, really, Keith?
You only know that because when we have a pint, you know the rubbish I talk.
I don't mention pint because I'm salivating. That's
yeah, me too. And it's only 8:20.
Well, Keith, on a serious note, is words are cheap, and the reason anyone doesn't communicate is because they've got something to hide. And whether it's the UK government, the Hungarian government, I think because there's so much criticism of governments, etc., they've just really retreated to a locked door policy. In other words, tell them what they need to know, which is a controlling thing. I've always felt, and I'm not going to knock Boris or Keir Starmer or whatever, but there was a feeling that there's been a control side of this COVID, etc. And I think people will feel that, and they're going to question. I think we're going to come out of this in better shape than doom-mongers suggest. And I think that the public now are more aware, and that we'll get better reform because people have realised what it's like. They've had time to think. If you're a reasonably intelligent person, which I hope most of the people are, is that you realise, wait a minute, we can make this better. It's not working. Clearly, COVID showed that. So, I doom-mongers forget that, Keith. I think we should be optimistic. Go for reform, but steady reform, and it can be done. But maybe the governments are stalling part of that rather than helping.
I mean, is it because they've concentrated so much on COVID. I mean, there are some alarming figures put out yesterday about the drop in the number of people going to the doctor, the drop in the number of people getting a cancer treatment, the dramatic rise in the number of people dying from cancer, and so on. In other words, we are focused on one thing, and perhaps the big problem with politics is that they focus on one thing and forget the rest until it catches up and spanks them.
Yeah. I mean, it's taken everybody. I don't care who you are. You could be an expert doctor, an expert analyst, an expert economist, whatever. It took all of us by surprise, Keith. There's no doubt, and it was unusual. But hey, the Spanish flu took us by surprise. Hey, Ebola took everyone by surprise. But people reacted. But has it been overkill, Keith? The question I'd love to ask is: has this whole thing been overkill? I'm going to be contentious there. I think in some ways it has been.
Well, I think you could easily be right. Yeah. I mean, I have the same feeling that perhaps we've overreacted. And once you overreact, of course, is you start a train of events that you can't stop.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. A good government should actually communicate to people. And NHS were brilliant. The one thing we've got, Keith, which even Megan would agree with, is that we've got a great NHS, and that's been shown. But the NHS can't do it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, be careful. I differentiate when it comes to the NHS between the medical staff and the doctors and the administrators. I think that the NHS administration side, in other words, the NHS, if you like, as opposed to the people that work for it, that also needs reform, drastic reform. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I told you the story of the hospital. I won't name the hospital, Keith, but £400,000 a year for the chief executive of a hospital. That's silly money, isn't it? Well, and I told you my niece gets 16,000 as a top nurse, and she's been there 10 years. £16,000, and and these are the people on the front who are actually doing the. I think you've hit it. What we've got to target bureaucracy and administration, Keith. There is too much bureaucracy. Nobody minds efficient administration and efficient bureaucracy, but we've got neither, and that's down to government.
Yes, I mean, but also the politicians have got to make sure that they are scrutinising. I mean, I understand that the scrutiny committee locally is a farce. Half the people don't turn up whenever it's called, and the other half don't know what the hell they're talking about. And if something is dropped off the agenda, the politicians have no idea. We need to get serious again with our politicians. I mean, you know my viewpoint is we should not have politics entering into politics. I mean, in other words, we shouldn't have party politics involved. What we need are people who are absolutely determined to look after their community. That's why they're there, not because they've got some agenda that is green or liberal or conservative or whatever. I don't care about that. That can be handled upstairs. But here locally, we should get people who actually believe in what they're doing. And some people say to me, Keith, it'll never work. And I point out that Vancouver was governed by something called the Non-Partisan Association. I mean, there was one member of the Non-Partisan Association, which was made up of nobody cared about the political parties, but Harry Rankin was a communist. And he was a most charming and delightful man, and he entered into the debate robustly. The only thing is that occasionally they would go down into the States to meet their counterparts to see, share ideas. And poor old Harry, because he was a communist, they wouldn't let him over the border. Communists were not allowed into the United States in those days. But I see no reason why non-partisan politics. The funny thing is, I think there's a great educational process that's got to go on about politics here, because the independents, people who run as independent, you get a couple in, but the rest are sort of thrown by the wayside. Oh no, they must be liberal, they must be green, or whatever, and it's rubbish, because people of real worth who really care, and that's why they go in as independents, is that they're rejected by the voter. Silly nonsense, silly voters.
Keith, to balance your argument, though, the public are a bit, what should we say, not very active in this. The public complain about the situation, but don't do much themselves. In other words,
No.
we have a very, very reactive public. Okay, so hence the politicians have got a free range.
Yeah.
We don't get involved ourselves so much, you
No,
know.
that's right.
And I think we can do that. Yeah. So there's blame for the population.
Would better communication do something about that? Because it does worry me that the public, and you're quite right, and a lot of people involved in politics down here say the same thing, is the public really don't care until, I mean, if suddenly the council tax was doubled, then they would sit up and they would say, but they haven't followed at all the events leading up to why it would double. No, you're absolutely right. We've got to have much greater political awareness.
It's a tough one because also we've got to get the right leaders, Keith. You're right. Take Roosevelt. You know, you think about the difference to our society. Had Roosevelt, against all popular demand, 70% of Americans didn't want to go in the war and fight with us. Yet Roosevelt got it through because that's a man who he was a great man, as was Churchill. But it's interesting that had there not been a Roosevelt there, America wouldn't have come into the war, and that would have changed things dramatically, Keith. So it's a question of getting the right people coming through schools and universities who are passionate about politics. I think too many MPs are often businessmen who kind of have got a bit of money, etc. I might as well get elected and end up just turning up to get their, you know, I don't know, £1,000 a day or whatever. That, for example, I think there's too much. It's poor. It's a poor Parliament, Keith, at the moment because everyone's looking after their own backyard.
Yes, that's right.
So I'm you know, you and I have been involved in politics, etc. And it's a dirty business. But yeah, we want the Roosevelts of the world. We want the you know, somebody who can actually unite the country rather than divide it. And at the moment, we've got a very divided country. That's quite clear.
Very. Anyway, we're running out of time, Paul. It's 8:27.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us again this morning. You and I are working very hard now, and I should tell you that Paul, come April the 5th, I think it is, which is a Monday, will have his own program. He asked me to lurk a background for the first couple because he said, you know, if I need to blame anybody for things going wrong, there you are, Keith. They can blame you. Which I'm sure any viewers that watch us regularly have noticed that if anything goes wrong, he blames me. Yeah, if there is other plaudits, then he takes the plaudit. And one would say he's probably a very typical politician.
The man who wears the hat gets the blame, Keith.
Paul, thanks for being with us, and you'll be back on Tuesday. But
I'll see you tomorrow.
But you and I will be plotting tomorrow to bring you more to the public. I mean, I'm quite sure that a lot of young people, if they ever come across this, which they probably won't, would say, oh, two old curmudgeons together, don't understand a thing. Well, it's about time, I think, that the young started to demand that we understand them. They had better understand us, because whatever else, we've been there and done that. And history does have a habit of repeating itself. And it really worries me that very sensible people, very sane, sensible people, are all saying what you said earlier, is Germany in the 1930s is being replicated here in Britain in 2021. And that it's something that we must all be aware of and be very careful of.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. See you next week.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.